right. I'm a lot more prepared this week. I know I'm doing this on Wednesday, not Tuesday, like I said I would, but yesterday was a very busy day. So I'm doing this today. Sorry, there are tractors going by. We're just gonna get right into it this week. Like I said, I'm way more prepared. I spent a lot of time prepping for this one and started prepping for next week's because last week I was not on it. I completely forgot about it, which it happens. It's the end of the school year. It's the middle of softball season. And it's just, life. Last week's episode wasn't exactly planned super well. I know I kind of already said that, but like I had made out a list of at least 20 episodes, ideas at least, for this to kind of go off of. Don't know that I will follow it the way I wrote it. I mean, I already haven't. But last week I talked about my progress over the years when I think my intention was to do what I was going to do today, which they kind of tie in together anyways, so it's not a super huge deal. I mean, it is my podcast, so I can talk about whatever the fuck I want, whenever the fuck I want. But I did want to be kind of linear with how I laid things out so that later on when I bring up topics, I can like bring some things up now and then really dive into them like specifics later. So last week I talked about my progress over the years. And some of these episodes also might intertwine a little bit, and that's okay. But this week I'm going to talk about more of like the history of my diagnoses, which is quite a rabbit hole, as I stated in the title. I spent a good amount of time writing yesterday about it and trying to just remember from the very beginning, from when I could just remember anything as a kid, how I felt. So even if I didn't have a diagnosis of anything as a kid, I still wanted to highlight certain aspects of things from my childhood that carried over into being a teenager and being an adult that are relevant to things. So we're just going to get into it. Got a lot of writing here. I don't know if you can see on my iPad. But I could have just done like bullet notes and been fine, but I really like got into it. And before I kind of start this, really, I have a copy on, I think, my phone or somewhere on one of my devices. Kind of sort of my medical history that has more detailed information than what I'm going to give today. I didn't feel like it was super important to just, bring up every little thing that every little doctor has said since I started talking to doctors as an adult. But it was interesting to go back and look at some of the notes and some of the things that, like, they write down and put in your chart but don't tell you, which I don't like when they do that. I want to be informed of everything. Some doctors are really, like most doctors, are really, really bad about informing you unless you ask. And some doctors really don't like it when you ask. They don't like to be questioned. But unfortunately for them, I will always be there to ask questions and make sure that I know who, what, when, where, how, why. Always. That's just, I have to know. And so looking back at my medical records and my therapy notes is somewhat useful. It kind of gives me a better idea of how they are perceiving me after the fact, I guess. I might try and dredge up that stuff later on and delve into it more specifically later, but I just wanted to detail just kind of the basics, because there's a lot, even just with this. I only got a few hours of sleep, so I'm very tired. But okay, now I'm really gonna get into it. I know I've said that like 2 or 3 times now, but I'm really gonna I'm really gonna get into it now. And I am gonna be like looking at my iPad a lot so that I can remember what I wrote down, or else I will just derail. So my diagnosis over the years has changed quite a lot. Mostly as an adult, just because as a kid, my parents didn't see my behavior and think she should probably be evaluated. I don't know how they didn't, but my thinking is that for them, they experienced or, felt similar, so they just thought it was normal the way I was acting. So they probably also need to be evaluated. And I know my dad has to a degree, and my mom kind of went to therapy for a little bit, but it was more so for like divorce stuff. But they're not as aware as I am of themselves. So, if they're not aware of themselves, how can you really be truly aware of your kids? I mean, that's my take on it. The more I've taken a hard look at myself and my behavior, the more I have begun to analyze her behavior and recognize similarities so that I can pick up on those things now and make a judgment call on whether I feel like she needs to go to therapy or be evaluated or whatever. Which I will never like force her to do that. It will always be her choice. I will always inform her and make sure she knows what's going to happen. They're going to ask questions. They'll talk to me. They'll talk to you, sometimes by yourself. I want her to be aware of those things, but make that choice for herself, because I don't want to force her to go if she doesn't want to, even though I know it'll be beneficial, unless something is really super concerning. But right now, nothing is really super concerning. As far as, a lot of the times we wait until it affects our quality of life. And for some adults, they don't even do that. They just raw dog it the way they've always done. And that's not always healthy. So, be aware of yourself and your kids. It's important. Because I feel like had my parents picked up on these things when I was a kid, the things that I'm about to go into, um, I feel like my life could have been very different and not as hard, maybe. It may not have made much of a difference. Who knows? But it could have made a whole world of difference. We can't focus on that. The only thing we can focus on now is now. But I feel like talking about this will maybe help other people, see things in themselves or maybe in their kids or whatever, whatever you take away from this. Or if you don't, it doesn't matter. But my intention is always to kind of share my experiences to help other people. Because when other people have shared their experiences, it's helped me open up and realize a lot of things about myself and whatnot. As a kid, I was always told I was a worrywart. Like, that term was used a lot. Alex is just a worrywart. Even from, like, the time I was, like, little. And I say little because I can remember being told that and feeling like I didn't have control over it. I remember standing in the front yard next to the porch at the house we lived in on 94 East, which was close to the lake, but just outside of Murray. And we lived there until I was about 9, maybe ish, 8 or 9. I don't know, up until about between 4th and 5th grade. And so I remember pretty early on feeling anxiety is what that was. But I was a worrywart. I was quirky and I was weird and I was a worrywart. That's how I was labeled. But growing up, I've learned that there are actual, like, medical terms for things that I've been experiencing my whole life, and that has helped me cope better and be like, oh my gosh, like, it's like I'm not alone. I thought it was just me. When I was a kid, I thought that the way things were for me were how it was for, like, either just everybody or it was just me, just, like, depending on what it was. Like, I lived in my own little fucking world, okay? Like, in my head. That was where I lived always. But I had a lot of social anxiety, and that just depended. Like, never liked making phone calls or talking on the phone or going in the grocery store by myself or even, like, giving my own or taking my own order at a restaurant. Like, when a server asked me what I want, I would just look at my mom or my grandmother, whoever I was with, to order for me, even as an adult. It's taken a lot for me to be able to talk to people in public. It's still uncomfortable, but I force myself to do it, even though it's uncomfortable. But I can remember I was probably in middle school at this point in time where my mom she wanted to send me in the grocery store to just go grab something real quick. And I was like, no, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I don't feel comfortable going in there by myself. Like, that's scary. I'll have to, like, be around people and talk to people and check out. And, like, what if I don't have enough money? Or, like, what if this and what if that? And, like, just scared. And she was like, well, when you get older, you'll have to do all these things by yourself. So you might as well learn now, like shaming me for having those feelings and not trying to understand maybe why I was feeling that way. Oftentimes, parents dismiss their kids' feelings because, like, you're an adult now and you're able to just, but kids aren't. And if you don't take the time to help them process them, they're never going to learn to. So some adults, like my parents, never learned to do that. So they didn't teach their kids that. So, like, I'm trying to reparent myself so that I can show my daughter how to do that so that she can process her emotions much better than I probably ever will be able to. Um, Even as an adult, I would have to have my mom or a boyfriend talk on the phone for me to make appointments, or just to talk on the phone or whatever, because, like, I just could not. Um, I can't read people over the phone very well, and I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing, so I'd rather just avoid it. I still hate it and I try to avoid it, but I'm able to force myself to just be uncomfortable and deal with it in the moment. But that social anxiety was always kind of iffy because I've always felt like I was fairly extroverted, but also introverted at the same time. It just depended on who I was around, how comfortable I was. Because if I'm more comfortable around you, the more I'm going to open up and be my true, bubbly, crazy, wild self. But over the years, that part of me has just been pushed down and pushed down and pushed down because, Alex, you're annoying. Alex, you talk too much. Alex, you're too loud. Alex, you repeat yourself all the time. I've heard this story before. Alex, you need to calm down. Alex, are you on drugs? Because you act so wild. I never did drugs. I just was me. But because my whole life people just showed me and told me that those parts of myself were, I guess, not good, I learned to stifle them. And it's been really hard to find that part of me again. So a lot of the times I'll be really quiet and really shy till I get to know somebody, and then I won't shut up. And then I feel bad because I don't shut up. So then I'm like, man, okay, you just need to be quiet, even though I want to talk. But I know some people don't want to hear me. Most people don't want to hear me. But at least with this podcast, you have the choice to listen or not. But that anxiety was always there. And on top of the social anxiety, I also dealt with a lot of, like, health anxiety. Like, terrified of cancer specifically, and, like, strange diseases that are, like, kind of rare. But I never expressed those feelings to anybody when I was younger. I didn't feel like it was a safe place to, or I didn't have a safe person to express that to. Even the people that like I did feel were safe, I still didn't feel comfortable talking about those kinds of things with them because, you know, nobody really talked about the things that went on in their head. Like their thoughts and feelings weren't like we kept those things to ourselves. Don't air your dirty laundry. Like we don't talk about it. Just so I did until I was an adult and I was like, hey, this is kind of a weird thing that I experienced as a kid. And they were like, huh? I'm like, yeah, that's how I lived. I never really had a lot of friends. I was fairly isolated, but I wanted to be social and I wanted to have friends. I just didn't know how to um like relate to and talk to other people. I still kind of don't. But especially as a kid, like I remember in elementary school, um it especially being isolating. Like I really don't remember having a lot of friends in elementary school. Side note, I don't remember a lot of my childhood. I only remember like bits and pieces, like kind of like snapshots. And some of the things that I do like remember, I've probably seen in pictures or in home videos, and those might be what I remember and not the actual thing itself. But certain moments I do remember where kids thought I was annoying, I got picked on, I got bullied. I just would sit by myself at breakfast and at lunch. I always felt out of place. When I moved schools, it wasn't a super huge deal because I didn't have any friends really, anyways. So I wasn't losing anything. So on the first day, there were all these new people. I didn't hardly feel any different. And then when I went to middle school, there was a lot more kids like me. So I kind of found I don't want to say a crowd, but like I joined band and I was able to make some friends through that, through music and art and kids who were like me. And that brought out that part of me that's just wildly excited and crazy, silly, goofy, pretty dumb. And in high school, it got better. I was able to kind of push through the uncomfortableness. I didn't experience as much anxiety because I was just busy all the time. I tried to keep myself busy, I think, as a coping thing. I mean, high school in general is just busy, but I did marching band and I did every possible band thing you could do outside of school, like quad state, all district, solo ensemble, whatever. I tried to do it all. And something that I thought I kind of grew out of, but I didn't really, it just isn't as prevalent, I guess, or it manifests differently now than it did when I was a kid. But um, I guess this can kind of be considered like an anxiety thing. But I was like obsessive with like numbers, counting things, and patterns. And also, like, sometimes I felt like if I didn't do something a certain way, or if I didn't do something right in that moment, something bad was going to happen to me or a loved one. Like, you know that thing that people say, like, oh, you step on a crack, you break your mother's back. It's like I took those things literally because I didn't understand that it was like just a saying. I didn't understand that. So I, like, once I heard that, I would try not to step on the cracks on the sidewalk. And as I've gotten older, I have to force myself to, like, not pay attention to the sidewalk because it doesn't matter. I'm not going to break my mom's back if I step on a crack on the sidewalk. But I still look down when I walk, and I'll count my steps. I'm just, like, hyper aware of whatever I'm doing all the time. I would also count, like, ceiling tiles, or, you know, if there was something that was just, like, had a pattern or something, I would count them. I don't know if that was, like, a soothing thing, or I don't know. Like, if I was in school or something, I would sit and count the tiles while I was bored in class. I was also pretty picky with my handwriting as I got older. If I didn't like the way it looked, I didn't like the way the paper looked when I erased it, so I would just crumple it up and start over. The amount of paper I went through was atrocious. I would get frustrated that I just couldn't make it look the way I wanted it to look. And also kind of with the obsessive stuff, like, I've always been super into art and music, pictures and videos, and being outside and playing outside and just, I don't know, just being outside. As a kid, I had a pretty, I guess, I don't want to say strict routine because it really wasn't, especially if I was home, but I knew on the weekends it was like this every weekend, and if it didn't happen, I got pretty upset about it. Because, like, I just got so used to it being that way ever since I was, like, a baby almost. My grandparents on Saturday nights would take me, and eventually also me and my siblings, since my siblings were born. We would go to Mr. Gaddy's and eat dinner every Saturday night. And then when I got a little older, they started taking me to Dollar Tree afterwards, and I was allowed to get one thing at the Dollar Tree. And if I looked up at my papa with my big puppy dog eyes, sometimes he would let me get more than one thing. But a lot of the times, I remember when my siblings were with me at that point in time, I don't think they have these anymore, but they used to have these mystery bags that you could get for $1, and it would have a few random things in it. Like, you wouldn't know what you're getting, but, like, sometimes it'd be silly putty and a slinky, or, you know, just little silly things. I kind of wish they still did that, like, for kids, just a little mystery grab bag. Those things were cool. It made it easier to go in and pick something to buy as a kid. Like, it took the decision making kind of out the window. Like, I didn't have to pick what toy I wanted. I could just go get a bag and I get what I get. Like, that was a very strict thing up until I was a teenager. And then suddenly I was, like, too old, too busy to go around my grandparents and my siblings. I regret not doing it more when I was a teenager. But also, like, as I got older and my siblings got older and my cousins got older and my grandparents got older, you know, they just couldn't do that kind of stuff as much anymore. Everybody got busy. But Then after we would go to the Dollar Tree, we'd go back to my grandparents' house and stay the night. And for whatever reason, I don't know at what point I became kind of obsessed with watching like the home videos that my nana took when we were like even younger. But like that was a ritualistic thing for me. Like I would go stay the night at my nana's after going out to eat with them and going to the Dollar Tree, and then we'd come back and watch home videos on the TV. And then I'd go to sleep watching those videos. I don't know why I started doing that or like what my deal was, but like I don't know, it was just I guess maybe because I didn't have a very good memory, so like watching that helped me remember. I guess. I don't know. I still kind of like really enjoy looking at pictures and watching those videos. I wish I could do it more often, to be honest with you. But I know that when I'm at my grandparents' house, uh, I try to visit with my nana or whoever else is there with her instead of, you know, derailing and wanting to go through all of her shit. But the health anxiety thing, I really don't understand it. I never have. I don't know where it came from or like what could have triggered it, but I've been that way ever since I can just remember. I'd get a bump or a scratch anywhere on my body, and I would think I'm dying. Like I have this bump or this scratch. Like I'm gonna get cancer, or the scratch is gonna get really infected, and I'm gonna die from an infection. But at the same time, I was terrified of medication. Like I got strep throat a lot as a kid. And there were several occasions where I would just toss those big, fat antibiotic pills behind the couch. And there was one time because I did that, I just about got scarlet fever. And then I got a shot in my butt, and that hurt, and I couldn't walk, and it was just not fun. I was pitiful. Um, but yeah, that was fun. As I got older, that health anxiety was more in the background and not as like prevalent unless like it was triggered by something. But after I had Ellie, it got bad again because like postpartum anxiety, which I didn't know was a thing. I knew postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis was a thing, but not necessarily the anxiety part. Um, you know, the whole responsibility of having to literally care for a whole other human was pretty anxiety inducing because like I was solely responsible for her survival. But in middle school and high school, I don't remember it being so rampant. And eventually, about a year after I had Ellie, it wasn't as bad anymore, kind of. It just depended. I didn't have my license and I was terrified to drive. So I was home most of the time, anyways. And if I got sick or something, I would just go to urgent care or have somebody take me to urgent care. But I didn't have like the access to just like, if I felt sick, just like go to the doctor or go to the ER or do whatever. A few years later, I remember the specific moment, and I think I kind of mentioned it in the last episode, where my mom sent me a text message about a girl a year younger than me with the same name. Well, not really the same name, but like the same first name, who got cancer. And in that moment, like it's like a flip switched. A, a switch flipped in my brain. And I was just like, if she can get cancer, I can get cancer. Maybe the cancer obsession had something to do with the fact that when I was between the ages of like an infant and 4, my great grandfather had cancer. And before I was born, my Gigi had cancer. So I don't know if I absorbed some of that anxiety and things subconsciously from my family around me, because I don't like avidly remember anybody ever talking about it. I do remember his funeral, but like I don't remember too much. So I don't know if maybe subconsciously I absorbed my family's anxiety and feelings and all that when he had cancer and he died from that cancer. But that's the only thing that I could think of that could have like maybe caused that. But I don't know. But in that moment when my mom texted me that, it's like a switch flipped in my brain, and I was like, oh my lord. And I started panicking and having panic attacks all the time. I couldn't sleep. I was so sleep deprived. And I was just miserable. I could not stop thinking about it and obsessing over it. And that kind of started like every time I felt like that, which I did not know they were panic attacks. It just felt like I was dying, or like having a heart attack. So it felt like I was dying. Or every time I had a weird feeling in my body that I didn't know what was going on. Like some of these things were physical manifestations of anxiety, like numbness and tingling in your face and hands and legs, and sometimes that can happen, or chest pain. But I needed to know that I was not dying, so I had to go to the ER to make sure that I was not dying. And I hated that I felt like I had to go to the ER all the time. Like I was in and out of the ER so much. And my family thought I was nuts, which is reasonable, I guess, but I needed to know that I wasn't dying. And I knew that I could trust a doctor to run tests on me and tell me that I wasn't dying. Now, a lot of the times I did get dismissed. Like, go home. You're fine. And that just made me feel like stupid. Like, oh, I got all upset and thought I was dying for nothing. And it's gotten a little bit better. COVID has worsened it quite a bit, but I've tried to combat those negative thoughts with my logical thoughts. Like right now, I noticed I have started to get like bumps on my hands and my arms that aren't super red unless I scratch them, and they weren't super itchy yesterday, but I just noticed that they were bumps. And it happened after I wiped down and cleaned my boyfriend's motorcycle. I wasn't wearing gloves or anything, but I used like this waterless wash and wax stuff. I also have like sensitive skin, like I have eczema. So I thought maybe that irritated my skin. I also just got 2 new tattoos on one arm, but the rash is on both arms. And so like I've been kind of like bugging a little bit about that, but just trying to, take Benadryl and put hydrocortisone cream on it and keep my tattoos lubricated and try not to scratch. But it's kind of making me nervous. I think I know what it is. I think it is just like my skin reacting to that stuff, that waterless wash and wax or whatever. Or it could just be a eczema flare up, from stress or something. Um, I just need to treat my skin and not pick and scratch like I want to so badly. But years ago, I probably would have just immediately gone to the ER and been like, I'm dying because I have a rash on my arms. But now I'm like, okay, let's narrow it down. What did you eat today? What have you touched today? What differently did you do today that could have possibly caused a rash? And then narrow it down and be like, well, you also have sensitive skin and yada yada. And I know a lot of the times Google can be the enemy of a hypochondriac, but for me, it can help alleviate and whatnot. Sometimes it makes it worse. Sometimes it doesn't. It just depends. But I'm able to handle those things a lot better now than I used to. I also like never wanted to drive. Like I can never remember a moment where I was like, yeah, I can't wait to turn 16 and get my license and drive. Like I never felt that. And that feeling was only more so amplified when I was in a really bad car accident when I was 17. So then I really like just did not like getting into vehicles. I definitely didn't want to drive. Scary metal death traps weren't my thing. But that created a lot of like shame and guilt for having to always rely on other people or ask for rides or like limited me a lot, especially being a parent. Um, and it just put me in a lot of bad situations. Eventually, 3 years ago, I was able to go and get my license and I was able to buy a car and stuff. And, I just handle it the best way I can now. Not always fun, but I don't, I just try not to think about it. But I am able to drive and be relatively okay. And it's gotten easier as I've driven more, but I'm always worried something's going to happen with my car. Um, and something bad's going to happen. And like, well, what am I going to do if this happens, that happens? Like, I've had several tires go out on me, and that's been like a nightmare. But I know how to handle it a lot better now, especially that I've experienced it. And when I was in high school, around the time I was like between the ages of 13 and 15, well, no, I'll say 12 and 15, I really started to feel more depressed because I started getting out of my head more and growing up and being more aware of things around me and my own feelings. And I realized how just shitty my life actually was. I was very naive and oblivious to a lot of things. And once that veil started to be lifted, I started experiencing some pretty gnarly depression. And I started self harming, which for me, I guess it was more of like a punishment kind of thing because I didn't act the way other people wanted me to act or do what other people wanted me to do. I would punish myself. And it wasn't like I never used a razor blade or anything like that. I would usually scratch at my skin with a safety pin or something like that. But it still was not a healthy coping mechanism because I didn't tell anybody about these feelings um, until it did get kind of bad. I started getting like this empty feeling, and a lot of the nights I would cry myself to sleep or I couldn't sleep and I would just lay in my bed alone and feel miserable and just want someone to hold me. I still feel that way. But as a teenager, that was rough. So I told my mom about the self-harm and some of the feelings that I'd been having, especially after, I think it specifically happened after a breakup or something like that. And I was like, Mom, I think I need to go like talk to somebody and see somebody so we could try and do something about it. So she took me to a pediatrician, and my pediatrician referred me to a psychiatrist, which I was not super thrilled about, but I was open to just, trying to do something to make it better. But my mom has this bad habit, even now, where she will speak for me instead of letting me speak. And so she talked for me, and I didn't really get to give my perspective of things. And the psychiatrist also wasn't very responsive, which I didn't realize that was kind of a normal thing for a psychiatrist. So literally before we even left the building, when we were checking out, I was like, I don't think I want to come back. Like, let's not make a follow-up appointment. So I didn't. I didn't go back. I just dealt with it. Which sucked. Like, maybe had I kept with that or seen a therapist earlier on, things would have been easier for me. But I can't ever make things easy for myself. Plus, my family just really didn't understand, you know? Um, as an adult, though, I slowly began to, really get my voice. It took me going through a whole hell of a lot to get there, unfortunately. Uh, but I tried my best to express my feelings just to get them out. I didn't know how to properly express them because I never really had. So a lot of the times it was misconstrued because I'm very blunt and I just kind of say exactly what I feel. And to some people that came across as me attacking them, especially if it had something to do with maybe the way they made me feel or something they did to me, which I was not trying to come off that way. I was just trying to express my feelings. I'm telling you literally what is going on in my brain and my body right this second. I just am telling you. I'm not, I don't know, but the reactions I got were not positive. Despite that, I still tried to express myself because I knew I needed to. I did not need to hold it in anymore, but not holding it in, or not holding it in hurt people, which I know that I'm not responsible for how people react or how they feel when I express my feelings. I've had to learn that the hard way, but also how you deliver when you're communicating is important, which for people with ADHD and autism um, is kind of difficult. But I've tried over the years to just accept that part of myself and embrace being blunt and different, even though people didn't like it or react well or understand. But I know that I need to be authentic and be true to myself. I've learned to communicate some better to help others understand me more, and I end up just over explaining a lot of the time. And with my last partner, I would force myself to open up to him because I every time I tried to open up with my previous partner before him, I was met with abuse. So, but he tried to make me feel safe, so I tried to just force myself to express how I was feeling. But I didn't understand my triggers. I didn't understand my feelings or where they were coming from or why I was acting the way I was because I had been through so much trauma and shit. Um, and I would end up just having a meltdown because he didn't understand, or I would shut down and go nonverbal. Um, and neither of us understood what was going on at the time. I was going through so much, you know, being in and out of the ER and trying to see a therapist and trying to try new medications, trying to fix myself, but not knowing exactly what's going on. Like when you go to the doctor and you try to explain things, but you don't really know what is happening and they dismiss it. It's kind of hard to treat things properly. So I tried so many different medications. I've been through a lot of therapists. Um, but in 2017, at this point, I had tried a few things and I had also been prescribed several things that I was too afraid to take. But that October, I had a really bad meltdown, and it was triggered by um, fear of abandonment. Uh, there was a lot going on, and I just was having some big feelings and trying to communicate, but I just couldn't say the right thing. And so my partner was like, "You can't come home until you go to the hospital." I was not suicidal or homicidal. I did not want to hurt me or anybody else. I just wanted to go back to my apartment. Um, but I had my mom drive me all the way to Paducah from Murray. Sat in the ER for a little bit with her until she had to leave, and then I was in the ER all by myself. Which I went voluntarily, even though it wasn't really voluntary. I had been talking about going anyways, just on my own to try and get on medication and get evaluated and be in a controlled environment where I could try medications and not be scared of it like I would be at home. But having a kid, that complicated things. But while I was there, I tried several different medications, talked to several different doctors and nurses and whatever. And by the end of it, they sent me home on Lamictal, which is a mood stabilizer, and Seroquel, which is an antipsychotic. I felt awful. They did help to a degree, but like when you take medications like that, there's side effects, and sometimes there are long-term side effects. And so, even though you're trading maybe a little bit of mood stability for your heart's function and your liver's function, or being a zombie during the day, you're trading off. Like, yeah, your moods might be more stable, but um, your liver's getting kind of fucked, and your cholesterol's kind of screwed, but hey, you're a little bit more stable than you were. But in the hospital, I was kind of formally given my diagnosis, which I had seen my primary care doctor before and therapists and stuff, but like they never directly ever told me like you have this. I mean, obviously the terms like depression and anxiety were thrown around. But when I went back and looked at my chart and I saw like bipolar and stuff written down, like they didn't tell me that. It was suspected just based on my behavior, kind of, and the fact that my dad is bipolar, but that never really felt right. And it wasn't cyclical. Like my moods change so quickly. And I know rapid cycling is a thing, but it didn't line up. And eventually those medications I got off of. After taking Seroquel for a year, I got off of it, which was hard because it's a nasty medication. And I only, within the last few months, got off of the Lamictal because it kind of just stopped working. But dealing with like processing trauma and family bullshit, being a parent, grieving the life I thought I was going to have, and realizing a lot of things and trying to figure out how to be an adult and be myself was and still is a lot to shoulder. I've had to switch doctors and therapists. I've lost a lot of friends. I've cut off and set boundaries with family and friends. And trying to learn how not to hurt people and be in a healthy relationship with myself and build healthy relationships with others and be a better person and be a better parent so my kid can thrive and not have to struggle as much as I have. But advocating for myself has not been easy to learn how to do. But it's been worth all the uncomfortable conversations and situations and losses. And I can attribute a lot of, I don't want to say confidence, but a lot of what has pushed me to be that way, like YouTube, TikTok, things on TV, even Facebook and Instagram, just like people sharing their stories or professionals talking about things, and also doing my own kind of like research or whatever on Google, which I do look at scholarly articles that are like in studies and that are peer reviewed, like legit shit, not just, bullshit. But it's really opened my mind and helped me find the words to explain what I've been experiencing my whole life. To circle back around, as a weird and quirky worrywart kid, I had no diagnosis. I had no advocates for me. Um, I just mostly struggled with allergies and infections that most kids deal with, like strep and flu and ringworm and, the normal stuff. But as an adult, hearing anxiety, depression, bipolar, borderline personality disorder, PTSD, insomnia, avoidant personality disorder, ADHD, and now the possibility of autism. Um, that's been a lot, which only in the hospital did I kind of find out about the PTSD and bipolar and BPD and um, the sleep disorder caused by those things. But like I mean, I knew I had issues, but having a label put to them was, I don't know. I didn't know how to feel about it. I still don't know how to feel about it. It can be validating in some ways, but when you're really still figuring things out, it can be confusing. And then on top of, my mental health, I deal with PCOS, TMJ, hypothyroidism, gallbladder disease, fatty infiltration of the liver, high triglycerides because of medication, IBS, high cortisol levels, high blood pressure sometimes, and like a high heart rate sometimes. Because I'm like always super hyper aware of like my heart and it beating in my chest, and that freaks me out. And I know that some of those things they overlap, and some are caused by other things like the medications, affecting my organs, um, and trauma, physical or not. Um, but today, out of all those things, I feel like my physical illnesses are manifestations of the pent up trauma in my body. Others caused, like I said, by medication use, um, or pregnancy, because like I have GERD and I had gallbladder disease, and those things are directly correlated with having been pregnant. I'm not sure. I've done a little bit of reading about the whole gallbladder thing, but a lot of women have to have their gallbladders taken out after they have kids, and I wonder why exactly that happens, but that was a pain in the butt. Um, I remember going to my post-op appointment, and it was a different surgeon that did my surgery, because the surgeon that performed the surgery, she was like 38 weeks pregnant when she cut me open, which was badass in itself. Um, so I saw a different surgeon for post-op, and the first thing he kind of said to me was like, well, the good thing is there was no cancer. And in my head, I'm not even thinking about cancer. I just, I thought I had some gallstones. It was gallbladder disease, and my gallstones were like the size of golf balls. But no cancer, so that was good. I was kind of like, that wasn't in my realm of possibilities in that moment, even though I know that's one of the things I worry about the most. But that was not on my bingo card that day. And even with these physical manifestations of things, like my mental illnesses, I feel like I have a much better understanding of my mind now. And I feel like I don't want to say I've figured myself out, but I definitely understand myself a lot better. And I think I could say that I've narrowed it down. Like CPTSD, ADHD, and autism, I know have a lot of overlapping symptoms, and it can be complicated to diagnose. Um, but I feel like those three things make the most sense. That, those are the things that cause my depression and anxiety and my obsessive behaviors, my avoidant behaviors, my meltdowns, fears, my sleep problems, jaw problems because of the tension, and my cortisol levels and my heart issues because of the immense stress of just being in survival mode like my whole life. And I'm still, unraveling and learning and trying to find better ways to cope and less harmful ways to treat my mind and my body for optimal function. And that's where I feel like I'm at right now. I don't have a formal autism diagnosis because that's kind of really hard to get as an adult. I tried to, but kind of got ghosted by Murray State's Autism Center. But that's okay. Now that I know more about myself, I can learn to accommodate for myself, and that is kind of tricky because with kind of starting to trying to accept how I am and who I am. It's difficult accepting those things and that I can't function like other people do. And I can't participate in things like most people do and are able to, and that I need help and support to do some things. That's a hard thing to admit. And it's been difficult trying to shift my mindset to accommodate my own self and not be ableist towards myself. I'm not normal. And I can't function and work and interact like other people do. And that's going to have to be okay. I'm going to have to be okay with that. I'm not right now. I'm still very hard on myself that I've tried to work jobs and failed. And I've tried to just get up and do things and function and do what normal people do. But I have limits and I can't. And if I do too much, I might be in the bed for a few days. Or like I might hurt or get a migraine or like, my body will react in the way that it reacts. And I'm trying to learn my limits of like what I can and can't do. And that sucks. Because I'm finding out that there's things that I can't do that I really want to do. And maybe that's out of like, wanting to be a people pleaser. And not necessarily because I want to do it for myself, but I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to get past it. I've even Googled how to accept yourself. And stuff like that, just because, I don't know how I can live and not be able to do the things that I want and need to do because society and family demands it from me. And maybe one day I'll be okay. But today, I'm just trying to make it through the day the best that I can. And I try to do that every day. Just make it through the day. Listen to my body. Analyze my thoughts. And be gentle and kind to myself. And express myself when I need to, which is hard when people don't understand. Or when you have so much to say and nobody to say it to. Because while this is cathartic in being able to do this and talk like this, I like to talk to people and have people respond to me and interact with me. Like that interaction is important. But I don't get that a lot. And so I find myself just being so restless and irritated because I can't get out what I need to get out. And I can't figure it out. I feel like sometimes I'm so close to figuring it out, but I can't figure it out. And maybe I won't ever figure it out. And that's a hard thing to accept too, that you know, this is just how it's going to be. And I'm just going to have to deal with it. How do you accept yourself when you're different and you can't do what other people do? When you see people working full-time jobs and making money, and whether it be, a miserable job or their dream job, or you want so badly to be able to do that, but you can't. And I could say that I can't because I've tried, and I got pretty messed up and burnt out and was not okay both times. I lasted 7 months at both of the jobs I stayed the longest at. I just don't know how to interact with people and deal with these unspoken rules and weird clicky things, and just people being shifty and wanting you to read it between the lines. And I have a lot of questions, but I'm too afraid to ask questions because I'm afraid people are going to think I'm stupid when I'm not stupid. I just want to clarify and make sure I'm doing the right thing. But I feel out of place. I feel so out of place. And there are moments when I'm with friends or I'm at certain places with people like me where I feel like I can be myself. I can be silly and goofy and bubbly and weird, and nobody's going to judge me. But those experiences are few and far between, unfortunately. And I hate it. But that's where I am. Processing every moment I can remember and reevaluating things and trying to look at things differently and figure things out. Maybe it's not about figuring it out. Maybe it's just about understanding. Well, maybe not even understanding it, but just like knowing and moving past it, I guess. I appreciate all of you that have popped in and listened today. I hope that everyone has a wonderful I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week. Summer's about to start. But next week, I will be back and probably talking about maybe my treatment plan or exploring myself. Elaborating a bit more on those things. And soon I want to look into having a guest. Now that it's going to be summer and whatnot, having someone come on here and talk with me. But thank you for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, week, month, whatever. And you'll hear from me next week. Bye.